that is the back part of the console. It has the emergency brake lever. This is actually backwards. This is the front of it. That's the back of it. It has the emergency brake lever that goes through here, and it has this little plastic type cover that slides along with the emergency brake in this channel. So I think the way to do that is going to be to put that plastic piece on the lever first, and then install this piece into the console, which it has to be because these two brackets here, they hold the windshield wipers window up and down, passenger driver window up and down switches. So they have to be put in with this holding them in before you put the console in. And that is why I am customizing the holder in the back of that center console area. Because if I have to change those switches, I want to be able to take this out without taking all those, that whole frame for the covers out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside the car, and I am going to mark which side of the switch has to be facing this way to go down, because I want to press my switch this way. Let me turn this around as you would be sitting in the car. Make it a wee bit easier. This is different on both sides, so. But anyway, I want to push that way to lower the window and pull to raise the window. So I'm going to mark the side I need to be in the front of this so that when I'm pushing it down, the window goes down. Same with the passenger window. And then I will take and install this underneath. That'll hold those switches in, and then as I'm installing it, you have to plug the switches in to the wiring. But before I do any of that, I'm going to take this console inside and clean it up a little bit. Okay, I got the switches disconnected from the wiring. I marked with red marker the front of them. Took the switch I had in the left hand driver's side and put it in my left hand side pocket. Switch in the right side is in my right pocket, so I know exactly where they came from. I think they're identical, but I don't know. The one thing I might have an issue with is I test fit the console there, and you see that big bundle of wire in the loom there. That might be just a hair too high. So my plan is, if that's too high, I will take off that loom and I will put all the wires in two smaller looms that will be lower, and they'll fit. But it might fit the way it is now, so I'm only going to do that if I have to. Next step is going to be to try and fit the front part of the console and decide which one of those pieces should go on first. So you're looking at the console piece, and it looks like that has to go first because of the little indentations on the back here. They look like the rear console fits over top of that. So I'm going to have to see if I can fit that in. Okay, so there's a little bit to digest here. The console had this piece in it, which has a screw hole in it. And I'm not sure how they had it, but let's see, that would be the driver's side. So you get the driver's side little extra panel that has the switch for the rear window defogger, and this fits in there like that. And that's interesting because there's no hole that really lines up with that. That is very interesting. Looks like somebody might have tried to plug it with something in the past. But at any rate, this is broken off. So I'm going to have to, and I think I see what I can do now, is I can put a screw in here and through that metal piece, and then I can drill a small hole in there and use just a sheet metal screw to tap into this to hold this on. But this should have been attached. It was broken. So I'm going to figure out a way to, when I saw these holes, I was going to put a pop rivet there, but now that I see that that's really where the screw needs to go in for here, that's out of the question. So I'll probably put two little flat-headed retainers of some sort on there, because this will cover it. And then once I get this in place, I'll drill a hole, use a sheet metal screw. And I may attach this up here. It's not very rigid, but it would at least hold it in. So I'm going to go find some screws and try to get that attached, get these cleaned up a little bit. And then I'll be back to show you what I've done. On further investigation, I found that there are a couple of metal brackets attached to the body of the car, that brace that goes inside the tip of the console should bolt to. I found some fairly large-headed sheet metal screws that I'm hoping are long enough to get through the console, the bracket, and into the place where it's meant to screw in. I'm not going to try to attach that bracket inside here other than with these screws if it works. I mean, it was on like that before, and I just realized I forgot to do something here. I had clipped my ground wire for my accessory into, I zip tied it into a bundle of wires, and I need to get that out so that I can put it in the as the ground to the accessory plug, formerly cigarette lighter plug, but I'm gonna have to cut that and maybe zip tie it again. I'll see. So as usual, it's live and learn. So I've got that where that's going to be screwed into, and the console's sitting, I think, where it needs to be. But the place where I thought that bracket was going to screw into is way back here, and the hole that I thought was going to screw into it is way up here. That clearly is not for that. There is another little bracket back here. I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing, but this I'm pretty sure was to an original radio, and maybe that's what that was too, was a mount for original radio. So this little thing here, I'm actually going to screw it to that metal bracket with a screw and a nut, and then we'll just tighten up the screws under here between the radio and the bracket, and it will be at least as good as it was when I took it apart, because I know that I didn't break that. That came off pretty easily when I took it off. But I'm going to have to find a screw to screw that console to the bracket. And then there are two nuts under the radio. I don't know if I mentioned they're 3/8 inch nuts that will hold the, it'll pinch that bracket around the top of the console. So I found a couple small screws that I think will work there. They are not stock, but then again, I've changed so much on this car that hardly anything is stock. Those are not going to be quite long enough. To make it easy to get those on there. So maybe if I take that off, attach it to the console, and then try to put everything in, it might work a little better. Not very hard to take it out. See if I can get these started on both sides, and then put it back in. That's interesting. These bolts will actually screw into that bracket. It's a slot, but the threads are just right for being able to attach it without a nut. I may put the nut on the other side just so that I'm sure it doesn't come out after I put both of them in. I don't know if this is on in the frame or not. At any rate, I need to go get me a 7/16 inch wrench to actually tighten up the nuts. Got the camera in my way, making it hard to get in and out of the car. Okay, the bracket is screwed onto the console. Hopefully these slots will line up with those studs on the bottom of the radio, or the bezel, I should say, the gauge bezel right there, and then I'll be able to reach through this hole to tighten them. Hopefully that's the way it's going to go. And these holes for the little covers on the side there, if they're not exactly right, I'll just drill a new pilot hole. They're sheet metal screws, they'll make their own threads. I'm hoping I won't have to do that. Let's see if we can get this into place. Worst case is I'll have to take the two nuts off of the bottom of the studs on the gauge bezel and put them back on, but they are accessible here. And I think that's what I'm going to have to do because they appear to be getting in the way of going over that bracket. So there's proof I can get to them. Okay. That looks pretty good. I think there's a couple of studs at the, or screw holes at the back there that we'll have to get in. Oh, there's a little tab that goes into the side of the dashboard. So you got to make sure you get that in there. Okay. Put those nuts on. I'll just get them started and then I'll shut off the camera so that I can that's not on the stud. was on the stud. It's further over than I thought it was. One started there. One started there. Now, as I said, it'll be a matter of putting these up in here and either finding the screw hole that was there or starting a new one. I'm not going to video that because it's just a matter of putting this one screw in. And I will get a little socket and ratchet and tighten up those nuts that hold the bottom of the console. Before I do any of that, though, I'm going to get the rear part of the console put in. There are these six screws that hold this bracket on, which holds the power window switches in place. Okay, so I put the power window switch left-hand side in my left-hand pocket. It is going to go right here with the down towards the front, the marked part I got. So the other one goes in the other side. That's the down direction. That goes towards the front of the console. And then this guy just goes right on top of them and holds them in place. I don't know if that's in the proper position, but feels like the switches are in place. So I'm going to put the nuts on it and tighten it up and see what it looks like from the other side. But I'm going to shut the video off for tightening those nuts. That was easier said than done. Those nuts did not want to start on those studs. I actually used a 1/4-inch Craftsman nut driver, battery powered, to get them started, being very careful not to tighten them too much because that would strip it right out of this plastic. So we're ready to try to insert the piece that goes around the parking brake in there and settle this down on the back of the console that's there. These holes go through the front console and into a bracket, and then there's some other brackets on the side, and of course this one goes in from the rear center compartment. Well, I'm going to try to show this process from the driver's side while I work from the passenger side. All the screws that were in this interior of this car was just a total mix of everything. Many of them did not match, so I don't know if I have the right screws, but we're going to try it. This is the thing that goes around the parking brake, and you can tell which way it goes because one end is rounded and one is flat. It matches the emergency brake, parking brake handle. So hopefully this will thread up into the slots in this console, and I can feed it on down in. Somehow here I have to get the plugs for the switches hooked in. I see the problem here. I think I needed to start to feed it under this, because that's where it goes first, or it's got to go there eventually, let's put it that way. Let's try feeding it down there first. You know what? There's no groove there. It just needs to be placed under it. try this again. I hope I don't have to take my fire extinguisher bracket off. I'm becoming a little bit concerned that I might have to. I think I've got it caught in a notch on the e-brake handle, and I got to pull it out of there. And my seat belt's under this side. I can tell this is going to require some fiddling with, and possibly this thing is going to be much easier if I take the fire extinguisher bracket off. So I'm going to shut the camera off. I'm going to remove that as far as I've got it. I'm going to take the fire extinguisher bracket off. There's no way it'll go over the bottom of that supports the bottom of the fire extinguisher. But once that is, and I still have the the seat belt on the wrong side of it. You know what, I'm gonna do it off camera, but I'm gonna try taking that seat belt out and seeing if I can. No, I won't be able to go forward with it unless I put the emergency brake on more. I might be able to find room that way. Well, it's kind of in. After I took off the fire extinguisher bracket, I was having trouble pushing it down in the back end because a piece of the carpet was over the part of the thing that came out, and the carpet extended, so I had to cut that back. But since I've had this all apart, it would appear that the passenger compartment has shrunk by about 1/2 inch. I don't know if you can see how much it needs to go. I'm pretty sure that the rear console is as far back as it can go because I got the bolt in the back, which was no easy feat. And I pulled it back as far as I could. So maybe the radio is keeping the instrument bezel from going forward and moving that front console forward. I'm going to have to check that out next time I get out here to work on it. But for now, it's kind of in, but not quite to my liking. Okay, it's about time I give you an update on what I had to do to get that console to fit, or at least what worked for me. So I took everything out. I took the emergency brake part of the console out. I took the main part of the console out, and I even took the gauge bezel out. Disconnected all those gauges inside there and the radio, because I wasn't sure if the radio was causing it to not fit. So if it is, I'll buy a smaller radio. But here's the process I went through. After I had everything out, I put in the main piece of the console, and what I did is I lined up that screw right there at the back that goes through both the emergency brake or parking brake console and the main console, and I put a screw in it. And I only did it on one side, but you might want to do it on both sides. After I did that, I was able to take this part of the console and trying to show you, I'm going to throw some more light on it. That is the gap between the dash panel and the console. I put that in there, I put that console in, and I was able to push both sides of the dash panel back so that it rested on the main console part. Once I had done that, I took a screw and I put it through the front part of the console into that bracket that was inside there that I thought was not for the console, but when I saw how everything was misaligned and when I lined it up, that in fact is to screw the console. Now I did cheat here, since my bracket was already broke and it seems to be fine without it. I didn't put that metal bracket back in. It was just more trouble than it was worth. That one right there. I suppose if it was connected to the console like it's supposed to be, it probably would have gone in all right, but it was already broken off at the top, and it fits so tight that that thing is solid. And I am going to put some fender washers on those two studs at the bottom of the bezel. Now, I was able to get the bezel back in without a radio. So my next step is going to be to remove that bezel again and see if I can get it in there with the radio I have. If not, then I'm going to have to see if I can find a smaller radio and put it in there. But I didn't see any reason why I shouldn't be able to get that in. When I took it apart, there's a lot of wires back there, but I didn't see any reason why I shouldn't have been able to get it in. So that's what I'm going to attempt next. So the bezel with the radio in it is a no-go. I was able to get a line of sight behind it. And the back of the radio is running into the vintage air ductwork. Why they didn't use the original Corvette ductwork that didn't interfere with the radio is beyond me. But I'm going to try to find a much smaller radio than that and see if I can get that to work.